Hello and welcome, and in this video I'm going to start off by talking about a story, a gambling story, back in the earlier days, my first ever significant winning night. The game that was being played was one that people from the area, from the people who played cards in that particular game, they enjoyed a game called Peter Pat, as they mentioned it as. And that's where everyone antes 1 unit, and everyone is dealt 3 cards, and 1 card thereafter would be face up. If this card is either a 6 or a jack, then the dealer collects 1 additional unit from each player. So everyone has to pay that player whatever it is, whether it's $1 or however much you're playing for. Then payouts occur for straights, flushes, and trips, although trips was named as that of having a Peter Pat. If a player has the highest trips, aces high, deuces low, then they win 2 units from each player. Each person has to give them 2 units, and they also win the game. They would also win the pot as well if they had 3 of a kind. And if there's no trips, and there never usually is, but they're odd time, first 3 cards, and only 3 cards are 3 of a kind. If no one has trips, then if somebody has a flush, actually even straight flush, would win 2 pots. You'd win a pot for a straight, a flush, and 1 for a straight. If you have like a jack, queen, king, 2, 3, 4, all of the same suit. And if you had a flush or a straight, you would get 1 unit from each player, and only 1 person can win the side bet, whoever has the best hand. And then you play the hand out clockwise, where each player in turn can play if they have a matching card and play an additional one thereafter. When all players pass a new card, then it is flipped and the dealer position is moving. So I'll explain that again a little more clearly. Let's assume these were the 3 cards where you would have a flush. So you would announce, where after the hands are dealt, if anyone's got 3 of a kind, they announce it pretty much immediately. So everyone would wait about 3 seconds, and then basically the dealer would say, does anybody have a flush? And then you're going to get yes or no answer, and then after a couple, 3 seconds, does anyone have a straight? Same thing again. So when someone asks, does anyone have a flush, you would say yes. And then after, if 2 people had a flush or a straight, then you would play the hand out, and then you determine at the end who has the highest. But that wouldn't be revealed at this point because you got to play your hand through. So you announce you have a flush. You get paid by every person, and let's just assume the first card that comes off is a 4 of spades, we'll say. Now, if you're not the dealer and someone can act before you, if they play the 4. Then what they'll do is they'll play a 4 and another card. But if they don't go, then you'll have a chance. So now you would play a 4. You'd be left with 2 cards. You have to play 1 of your 2 cards. So say you play the queen. What would happen here is you would now be the button, in that you're the one that would be playing first because you just played. So anyone else can play a queen, starting with the person to your left. If they have a queen, they can do the same thing. And if it goes around in a circle where no one plays, you flip up a new card. The dealer position would move to the left. And if you were holding this, if you have an opportunity with 1 card left to play the 10, then you would be the first person out, wins the game, wins the pot. And in a situation, say if you have, say, a pair, then you have basically 2 choices. Number 1, if you get a 5, you can throw the pair of jacks out and win the game instantly. So if you have an opportunity to play on the 5, and if you play on the jack, then you have to play the individual 5 after and then play the jack. So you can't play a jack to a jack. You got to play a different card than you did. And that's basically how the game was played. I started off the game playing for about a $20 stake. We didn't start playing this game. It was games like 7-card stud and draw poker to start. And then it moved into this game. Now, I was at the point where I was out of currency or dollars. I lost everything. Now, I only lived a block away from the poker game, so I walked to my house and just got another, I think it was $10, $12, something in that low area. And it worked out that I was down to my last $1 playing dollar ante. So I'm in a position here where if anyone having a flush or a straight or a three of a kind, the Peter Pat hand, or anyone or the six or jack comes up, I'm going to be done this game, and I'm going to have to basically, well, I'll have to pay that dollar or two afterwards. It'll be my last hand because I didn't really have any extra cash, at least to gamble with at this point. But I won this last hand. And the winner of the hand becomes dealer of the next game. So that's one reason why the six and jack rule is in place, where you get paid, because if you are the winner of a game, you basically got a 2 in 13 chance right off the bat of getting another quick win thereafter. Well, it worked out for about 20 to 30 hands in a row. I won every single hand, whether I got the six or the jack as a dealer, whether I had a trips, flush, straight, I got a couple nice sets that night, or whether I was the one to go out. And I was now up to maybe $40 to $50. And they tried switching decks. They tried doing a lot of different things, but I just kept sitting there. We even changed positions, or seat positions. I was like, whatever, but this kept on growing to like 70 and then to 100. So after I had a lucky streak of 20 to 30 hands, one in a row, one way or another, I never really had too many moments that got pretty poor, at least till near the end, as I was playing people who are around my age now back then. So I was under 20, where everyone else was late 30s and the early and late 40s and early 50s for some cases. Started playing at about 10 at night, and we finished playing at about 8 or 9 in the morning. The last 2 or 3 hours, I went from about plus 350, maybe even 400, to about plus 250. So the person who lost their grocery money for the week got some of it back, but I found it very interesting what I learned about the mechanism of people who are losing and gambling, and just the way it gets to them on an emotional level. You could really sense their frustrations. But in gambling, when you win, you win. When you lose, you lose. That's something that all gamblers, they understand that factor completely. And within such, the stakes were getting to the point where it was me playing heads up with the biggest loser for the last 2 hours. It went from like a 7-8 player game to like a 3-2 player game. Again, going on to like well past sunrise. And there's a lot of people, when things get tough in the gambling game, emotions will get the best of them. And I'm using this example, of course, because of that in the gambling of cryptocurrencies. When people are losing, then a lot of irrational decisions come into place. So if any capitulation comes into place, I know that a portion of the price going lower on such an event to take place, there'd be a lot of movement even just based on that. People who managed to get in any time in the last year, there's going to be a lot of people panicking. People that even got in at cheaper prices like 800 or 1500, even though they might be still up there, like, oh my goodness, I was doing so well, I can't handle the losses. And then even the ones that have gotten in, especially recently, they come in, they buy at like 8,000 or 8,500, then they see it at like 5,000, 4,000. It's like, well, what was I doing? And then of course they sell because the price has gone lower. And of course, normal market dynamics should, to me, states that you expect big volatile up and down moves. Keyword is and. So you realize that there's going to be up moves that follow. So if you're ever looking to enter in positions, at what points here does it look really good or really bad to enter into a position. Now I'm going to get the Bitstamp chart for this one and move it to the weekly. Because obviously it's easy to tell it was doing well from the start point here, but if all you had was this data, you knew that it was 11 and it was down $4, any of these prices. If you've seen that it's already had a good price correction down, then it's generally a good time to buy. So obviously to enter in a position here, yeah, so good, it's good. It becomes a little bit difficult when you have this overextension here, but then you wait, you get a correctionary move. And again in here, this makes it, this is okay, so a tough time to buy. Of course, if you do and you hold through, every single time it has managed to work out. So that's something to keep in mind. And buying in here meant around this point, the price isn't that much different, if not even around the same at some points. But it obviously had that big move. And then even starting up here at like $33, even though it went up to like over 2 here, becomes very difficult to enter into positions at this point. And sometimes when you think something is overextended, so here when it was rising up to 31 because it came from 11 and it tripled, obviously it was a real situation where it quite wasn't the fact, or it wasn't the fact for that matter. It never even came back to this level. But it meant here that within this correction, it hasn't had any decent correction as of yet, but that worked out to be a good time to buy. And then as it's just leaving in the early stages of a run, you see any type of spot where it's leaving the 18, then you can basically make a case, oh, we're still below a key high. If we break a key high, you're going to have a decent leg higher. There's a decent leg higher. So again, you're getting well overextended, making it difficult to enter into positions. And buying here meant that you had to wait to see profits, or at least trade in and out successfully, out and in this case, successfully in the market. But anyone who bought here didn't experience any gains. This is November of 2013. They didn't experience any gains until really the start of 2017. So it took a total of 3.5 years almost to start to notice that, by buying at the top anyway, that you were in a winning position. And in this case here, buying when it was low in this point, you're like, okay, this was at 1100. Now it's down to 350, a 3x move. Well, that's really good. And you know what? It could have been better. And a lot of people who bought in there sold in here. So be it. Let them do that. But those whom waited were successful. It also signifies that it had a really good price correction amongst this point. It did so through both price and time. But it meant also, if you are looking to buy in segments, you see it in this low area here as a buy spot. And then right down in here, another leg lower here. If you kept buying in that situation with the intention when you're buying here of buying lower, if of course it did it, then that worked out for a lot of people. Well, everyone who held on, it worked out. Pretty much everyone. You don't know the individual details. And then from any point previous high or lower than previous high, it makes it a little easier buying on breakouts, knowing that if you're right about the bullish move, there's always going to be a great upside room available because of the thinking when you break a key level, you're going to have a significant leg higher. And boy, did it obviously ever do so. When it had correctionary moves here, great spot for buying. And anywhere leaving in here. And then this was an interesting spot in here. because it was really overextended, as we can see, with like 6, 7 or close to such in green candles higher, making it to 3,000, which was close to a 3x gain, and it was barely an okay leg higher. Anyone who happened to wait to buy down here, it worked out. Any situation of leaving the band, of course, that worked out to be a good buy spot. But when you're in a bull market and you keep on having these kind of moves, each time you buy, it becomes more scary, because you could be very soon easily ready to enter a pattern of, and I'm going to make this plural, lower highs and lower lows, as you're making the plural here of higher highs, higher lows at this time. But as this keeps going up, you can see where entry positions make it very difficult. And every single time when you see this, if you're always waiting for the 18 test, what are you going to get? And I'm going to remove the drawing tools and just go back in time. And when we see it from before, it originally had a move to here. It got, if you're buying on strength here, that was at 119. Still better than half the price here, but you've seen how it settled in at the 18 for quite some time at that situation. When it had this high, it had developed a level of support right around getting this 300 number. So that would have been just price action. If you're like, oh my goodness, it's going up, it's 415, 591, oh, I want in. If you wanted the earliest discounted price, you were paying basically well under 500. And the 18, of course, never had any real signs of breaking out until late 2015, or another way of putting it, the start of the year is when it bottomed, but it took until near the end of the year to really show good signs. Like, are the bottoms in? Are the bottoms in for Bitcoin? Question mark. For you to be able to remove the question mark and then say yes, they were in, because of this this setup in here. But every single time, if you wait for the 18 correction, when we looked at the ones on the 2017 rally and the ones that preceded it, every price correction showed how it was able to settle in within such. And then the last one, of course, as we can see, that it had one move below. So that would be like, oh, okay, a buying spot here. There's been many opportunities now. If you miss it the first time, you've had a couple opportunities to buy lower than 7,000, including right now at this moment. And then if you're like looking for the entry position now, it's like, okay, if it goes down, and I've mentioned the key levels, 3,001 and then 1,000 thereafter is where I'd be looking. That's where you'd have a plan as an entry position to accumulate more of them within your portfolio. If, of course, you don't want to play the game of buying when you're in these situations when it's going higher. And that's why, generally speaking, I like the strategy. When markets go up like this, I'll put sell orders in and then just be ready to buy back whenever it does. So thus, sell on the way up is what I do, and buy on the way down. It's the easiest game in town, for me anyway. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.